So in this video, we're going to kind of adjust our columns and where our brace frames are just to match what we've done on for our curtain walls on our elevations. So what I'm going to do is actually select all these grids. Now I'm in the architectural model. So let's start with the architectural model first. So what we'll do is we'll open the architectural model, unpin our grids so that we can move them. And what I'm going to do is, right now we have our columns spaced evenly throughout the building. I'm going to actually just kind of adjust them to kind of match and be more symmetrical within um, our windows. So start at the bottom right corner. So once you get that open, we'll go to the bottom right corner at the level 1 floor plan. Come down here to grid 8. We're going to center this on this 4'8" wall chunk here. And we can do that easily just by, let's get rid of these dimensions if you have those on there. And then let's go to our dimension. We'll go to our annotate command, align dimension, and let's grab this window or the wall, the grid, and then the window or the wall. And then we'll just hit the equal. Oops, saying that the constraints are not satisfied. So I'm going to delete those dimensions. I'm going to try this again. Trying to use the equal. So I think it's because it doesn't want to, it's trying to move something that it doesn't want to. So it's easy enough to fix. We can just actually select this dimension with this grid with those two dimensions on it. Instead of using our equal parameter, we know it's 4'8". So all we have to do is figure out what half of 4'8" is, which is 2'4". And then now we can make that grid be centered on that. And then we'll go into our structural model and move that grid. Let's do the same thing here. So this is, we'll throw a dimension on here, on the wall. Yeah, so I think what happens when we try that equal, it's trying to move something other than the grid. So, but again, we know this is 8'8", so half of 8'8" is 4'4", and we can center that grid up on that wall. We'll do the same thing at this bump out. What do we do for this bump out? So DI is dimension. Yep, 6'2", so we'll do 3'1". And we'll change that to 3'1", so then when we get into our structural model, we'll be able to move these grids no problem. And this is centered on the building. That should be fine. Type DI for dimension again. And since I already know that this grid is supposed to be 3'1", because of that other side, and then the same thing here. Throw a dimension on either side. Select the grid, which will activate that dimension. And then we can pan over here if we forgot, and it's 4'4". And the last one on this side. And what do we do over here? 2'4". So select the grid, which will activate that dimension. And then you can select into that dimension to change the value. Alrighty, so we did it there horizontally, which will affect both sides because we're just adjusting the grids. So let's do the sides now. I'm just throwing a dimension on both sides and then getting the overall, since we already know that the just throwing the equal on there isn't working because it's trying to constrain something else. So 9'4", half of 9'4", so half of 9 foot is 4.5, and then so 4'6", so let's try 4'10". My mental math is not as good as it should be. But at least now we're closer. And we know it's 4'8" for that grid to be centered on this wall. Looks like this one is already centered. And then we actually already know, because it should be the same. Select that grid and type 4'8". And then now all of our sides. I'm just going to right click, select all instances in this view of our dimensions, and delete them. And while we're in here, let's go ahead and hit our dimension command, and let's do an overall from grid to grid. And then we'll hit each grid. This is always a good thing to do, is to dimension your overall and then dimension from grid to grid so that everybody knows what the grid dimensions are. It's easier to lay out steel. And then we'll do that in the east-west direction. Make sure your grids are connected so that if you, or your dimensions are connected, so you don't have to select each dimension string. You can just select the whole line of dimensions and you can move it. So don't, for instance, don't, select one and then come back and do another dimension that's separate. See, now they're two separate strings, so you want to make sure those are connected. You could delete the first dimension or whatever dimension, select the dimension, and then edit the witness line to add additional dimensions as required. So now we've got that. Let's go ahead and save and close. I'm going to save. You can come up here, Control S, or come up to File and hit Save. I have a mouse that I can assign commands to, so I just click the S. Kind of forgot to. I think most of us are familiar with how to save with the Control S or up at the file. It's pretty common for most programs. So now we can open our structural model. And like we talked about before, we placed our model or our windows, but they're gonna be in conflict with the with some of these braces. So we're going to change those to better fix our so that they look better with our windows. So let's go to our plan view. We can go to our level 2 structural plan. We're going to actually go to our manage tab, or no, it's collaborate tab, copy monitor, select link. Let's select our architectural link. Come up here and hit copy, multiple, and let's grab all of these. Hold Control to get another set down. Then hit finish. And then come up here to copy monitor. It'll kind of move. It'll go from modify grids to this. We'll select copy monitor to get back. And then you can hit finish. And now we have the grids in our project. So now we can hit align. So I go to modify tab and hit AL or click this align button. Click the grid first. And then you can click the center of the beams or the columns. Let's hit cancel. Let's undo because we've got a bunch of groups in here. Let's see here. What is the best way to go about this? Let's do these ones in the middle first. Go to grid 4. And we can select these beams. And actually, let's do this a different route, because we should be able to just window over all of these beams and columns. So let's do that. And let's go to our 3D view. Let's select these in the 3D view. It'd be easier to move. So let's select all of these on that grid line. Go back to our level 2. MV for move, or you can hit the move up here in the modify tab. And we'll move all of these over to. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, let's let us do something else here. Let's select all of our structure. Hit filter, check none, and select model groups. Hit OK, and then ungroup. I think for these minor changes and everything, it's trying to move all of these groups and things that we made. So I think by just ungrouping everything for now, we can more easily adjust our framing. So select everything kind of in this left, this third, fourth column row over. Make sure it's at the grid 4. Hit move. And let's see if we get an error now. And open move just fine. So we can go and repeat the process. It looks like that middle grid is going to be good, and the other side will need to be moved. So let's go to the other side of this brace frame. Grab all of those. And we can hit move from the center of this column to that new grid line location. And we'll do the same thing for these ones on the end. So we'll grab these. Make sure you don't grab these little beams. So let's go back here and try to re-grab those. So what I can do is I can hit these columns, just select them, and then hit front. Gives me like a straight on view, and I can window over just the columns without grabbing those little beams here. Go back to level 2 and move. So remember, if you're getting errors, it's probably because it's grouped. And so we'll go back here. Select the 2 columns that you want to move. So get a straight on view. Left click up here and window down to make sure you can get all of them in that row. You're getting all the columns and the beams. Go to level 2. Move. And align them with that grid. Alrighty, so let's go to this side and fix up this other side. Just selecting the top and the bottom. So it just makes it so that it's full height. If I were to just select the top, it still works, but it's going to zoom in on that element that you selected. So by selecting this top and bottom using control, I can just get it to zoom in on those specific columns at that height without having to pan out again or zoom out again. Hit move. And we'll move these over. As you can see, beams and columns are generally following everything over. In some cases, they're not. So we'll just have to go in there and fix that profile, but that's not a big deal. And the last one here. And we'll select this last row of columns or column of columns on this side and align it with that grid. As you can see, those will move with it, but the actual layout isn't moving because we've got to modify this system, this beam system. So we'll do the same thing here, but we'll do it from the side. Go back to the 3D view, pan around. I'm going to select the top and the bottom column. Select my view cube face for the left or right, whatever one you're at. And window over, kind of pan around to see I've got everything. And then we'll move. Can't move pinned element. Oh yes, so I think because some of these are beam systems, which is fine. We'll just select previous. Get our front view again. What we'll do is we'll window over all of these. We're going to filter, check none, and just check the structural columns. Go to level 2, and then we'll move these. We'll have to adjust this beam system. I think if you remember in the structural video, we actually spaced these such that they would land on these columns, but we'll have to change that now since it's not as symmetrical. It's a pretty common exercise that you'd have to do working with an architect or structural engineer. As things move and as you're coordinating and elements change, you're going to have to change your models to kind of follow the architect. Or this architect will need to follow the structural engineer depending on what is going on. You know, if the structure's like, hey, we need to do this in order for this building to stand up, architecture will have to adjust to accommodate for the structure. So here I'm on level 2. I'm going to hover over this beam until I can get this beam system dash line to highlight. And then I'm going to edit the work plane. Oops, not edit the work plane. Edit boundary. And then align the boundary lines with the center of these columns again. And these don't necessarily have to be aligned. There's obviously going to be beam connections at these columns for beam to beam, but it would be good to have them lined up. Let's check this out. So I have a max spacing of 8'1". I'm just going to kind of play around with the settings here to see if I can get something close. Looks like 5'6" is going to be pretty close. Select this beam system again. Changing it to 5 foot. Let's try 5'3". Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get close enough. So I'm going to make a 5 foot max spacing. So what do we have in this other one? 8'1" max spacing. last thing to do here is check out. So it's 21 feet between the center of this column and the center of this column. So 7 foot is probably a better spacing to get us closer. 7'6". I don't think we're going to get it right on the money, but that's okay. We'll get close and we'll adjust these beams later on. Let's move to our next one and adjust our layout boundary. And so what do we figure on here? 7'4". So if I did a fixed distance, 7 feet, I think let's do that. That seems like that's perfect because what it's doing is it'll start this fixed distance and it's landing right centered on here. So let's do that. So what I did is select the beam system family, change maximum spacing to fixed distance. Oops, not fixed number, but fixed distance at 7 foot. Because 21 divides by 7 pretty evenly, so it means we have 3 beams in between there. I'm going to double click on this boundary again and reset system just to make sure it's resetting. And we'll go to the next beam system and then align. Reset system before we exit just to be sure. AL for align or modify tab. Under the modify tab you can find the align up here. And this is the next one. So what we're doing is just going through all of these just to making sure that we're readjusting our beam systems so that they're falling in based on our changed column locations. And just aligning them with the center of the grids. And these ones will change back to a 7 foot fixed spacing, which is what seems like it's working really nicely with that the new column layout. And last one, I'll align. And then I'm going to grab all of these. Actually, that might be better. Let's see. So kind of just page through or pan through, hit tab, hold control to select the next one over. And then change the layout rule to fixed distance and spacing at 7 feet. So now we did level 2. So it's just window over. Let's see, let's window over all of those. So the 3, 4, and 5. Use our filter to unselect floors, unselect columns, and then we can leave the girder joists and others and the structural beam systems selected, and then hit delete. Oops. Let's see. Uncheck everything but beam systems, because all the beam system beams are pinned. So now we should be able to delete the beam systems. And then I'm going to window over level 2 because that's the one we just fixed. Filter. Let's check none this time, and then just beam systems. Okay. Give it a Control C. Or copy. And then paste align to selected levels in 3, 4, and roof. And now we've got our beams all lined back up there again. And let's go about the business of adjusting our brace frames. So let's go back to level 2. Let's go to our elevation. So I went to the west elevation, which this is actually the north elevation. And this is actually the west elevation. So let's change those while we're here. So this elevation should be north elevation. We'll just call it north elevation so we don't have to worry about, it's going to, if we try to change it to, it can't have two norths, so it'll give us an error that says we already have a view. So if we just add elevation at the end, we should be able to change all these pretty easily. And so what I'm doing is selecting a little arrow in front and going to the properties palette, and where it says view name, I'm changing the view name there. And we'll do this for the last one, for the east elevation. So let's go to our new, now north elevation. And I'm going to delete these other ones up above because we'll redo the ones on the lower one. And now we can see the windows that have been added. Select them and just delete them. And to adjust these, last I remember, it was kind of funky to adjust these. I thought using the ratio seemed like that was working pretty good. Oh, I'm seeing the one beyond. That's what I'm seeing there. So let's, before we start going, let's check this far clipping offset. Say clip, and change this to like 30 feet. Whatever you have to do to get it to just see this side, because what we're seeing is the brace frame on the other side. So I think 0.75 is going to be good ratio, I guess, to adjust these beams or these frames. Oh, I see. So let me try a different approach here. Just going to delete these on this side. Go to level 2. Go to structure. Go to beam braces. Still the HSS 8x8. Actually, I'm going to throw a dimension on here. So it's 21 feet. So yeah, let's go back to the level 2. Go to brace. And let's place brace from center of this column 7 feet over. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. The structure, go to beam brace, select the center of this beam, and go over 7 feet. Let's go to our north elevation to check it out. Yeah, so I think now we can look. We can see, I'm going to go to the floor plan view, level 1, and just check out the location of this. And I think we'll center up this window on this brace frame so we can easily, so we don't have to try to mess around with the brace too much. I think if we center this window, let's see. So what I'm doing here is selecting the beam brace, select in attachment reference level to level 2, and then giving it a -2 offset. Let's copy them over. I'm going to Control C, paste to selected levels, and do 2 through 4. My only worry now is it's going to mess up our brick coursing when we adjust these windows, but we'll figure that out here in a second. Now we can copy all of these. Actually, before we copy all these, let's go to our 3D view. Go to the south side and delete these. Let's go to our level 2 plan if we have them selected, and then we'll mirror around this center grid 5. So you can select mirror by pick an axis, select level 5 or grid 5. There it is, throws them over to this side. And these other ones, I'm going to, you see how they're into the column. I'm going to select level 2 for their start attachment level, which doesn't seem to be working. I'm just going to try to trim. I think that'll get her done, as they say. And I'm doing trim extend multiple elements, so I can select this column face and then just go down here and select all of these. I'm going to make sure that the start level offset is 0. When I trimmed them, it seemed to put them back, or give it a start level offset. Of this 10 inches, so the same thing with the other side, trim multiple. Select trim multiple again to switch your reference where you're cutting from. And then we can select all of these. And make it 0 for the start level offset. Yeah, let's go fix the other side as well. Trim multiple. So trim extend multiple again, so pick a different face. Trim extend multiple, pick that again so that you can change the face. And just keep working to the other side. And last time. Trim extend multiple to the face of a column, and then trim all of your braces here. And we'll go back through, select them all. Make sure there is a start elevation of 0 on all of them. And now we've got our brace frames. Let's work on the ones on the east and west side now. So we can go to the west elevation, which would be our elevation. Let's go to your view graphics, or visibility graphics. go to Revit links and turn on your architectural model if it's not, and then make sure it's checked to underlay. So we can see our brace frame. Let's do no clip again. Clip without line. And change this to like 80 feet so we only see the front of the building. Yeah, I think 80 feet will be good. I'm going to delete these brace frames that we drew previously. Delete. Let's go to our level 2. And I'm going to close these other elevations. I'm going to toggle my views. View. Tile views. And so we have our brace frames between grid 3 and 4, and grid 6 and 7. I'm going to throw some dimensions on here. So 23'5". 23'5" is our new dimension. Go to our structure. And we'll select the middle of this column again. And let's go over 10 feet. Select this brace frame. Tell it the attachment level will be level 2. And let's give it a -2 foot offset. And then we can go to this west elevation. And let's mirror it. It's mirrored in the west elevation view by drawing an axis, mirror draw axis, and typing SM to get snap mid for the center of that beam, and mirroring it to the other side. Again, we'll have to center this up on this elevation. I'm going to change the distance to 8 feet. Give us more room for our window in here. And let's copy these up. I'm just going to hit Ctrl-C-O for copy. And copy them up per floor. They still kind of got disconnected from the beam below. So let's fix these up. Go to our west elevation. Get the trim multiple. This time we'll select the face of this beam flange and then trim these all back. Select trim multiple again, select a new face. And let's just make sure that the start elevation is 0 on these ones as well. And I'm going to copy these from grid 4 to grid 6. And of course they lose their association, so we'll do the trim multiple a couple more times, as we'll likely have to do these again on the other side when we mirror them. Remember to check the trim multiple again so that you can select a new face to trim, to use as a trimming object. And we'll select all these and make sure that the offset is set to 0. So start attachment elevation, set that to 0. I'm going to select the rest of them. And we'll mirror them to the other side. And all of this is close to maybe what they'd do, but we'd have to think about, a structural engineer may need to add additional braces and supports, shear walls, moment frames, like they were talking about in our lecture about this book, to kind of make sure that this building is stable. Oops, I forgot to delete these little guys on this side. Not an issue. Let's come through here and delete the existing ones, and delete them. And let's trim multiple again. And also think about, if you're starting off with a drafting field, this is probably the kind of stuff you might have to do, kind of tedious work at first, going through and maybe an engineer will get everything all set up, but you'll be tasked with kind of like fixing it, making sure all the beams and columns are aligned correctly, updating it, updating the drawings as they come through with changes, and relocating stuff. So as you progress, often you'll be able to set a lot of the stuff up before the engineer, so that when he gets there, you'll be halfway there. For instance, where I work, often we can't anticipate what the engineer is going to require. So we'll take a look at a building and we'll say, okay, we'll get most of the information down, and then he'll fine tune it. And so we'll have a lot of these elements already in place, and ready for him to mark it up and add his or her design. We have 2 female engineers too, so. All right, and so the last thing, we'll select these guys. Make sure the start offset attachment elevation is 0. And there, we got our beams and our brace frames. Yeah, looking at this myself, I think they probably want to do, likely we want to do brace frames at the corners as well. But since we don't have an engineer on board for this project, we're just going to design it as though this works. But you're going to get the idea. You can look at the the examples in the book and kind of see that we're getting close. And if the architect really wanted these windows here, they might design a moment frame here, which these columns would need to be continuous instead of stopping, and then the connections would be a bit different for these corners then. So like we kind of read about, they could use a combination of moment frame, brace frame, and shear walls. So this probably could still fly. engineer would definitely make it more economical with the beam sizing and whatnot. So let's go ahead and save this. Now let's close it, because you can't have a linked Revit model open, so we couldn't open the architectural in the same session. Now, if your computer can handle it, I often will work in 2 different sessions of Revit. So I'll have 2 different sessions open and running of Revit. And so that makes it so that you can modify it without having to close the other ones. And so now we should see that it automatically updated these locations. And let's make sure our windows are going to work with how we adjusted our columns. So I'm going to go to this, start with this west elevation. And I'm going to take it off realistic because that's hard to look at. I'm going to go to my level 1 floor plan first. I'm going to go to DI to throw in a dimension. Yeah, it's not going to let me. So I think what I'd want to do, I'm going to throw a dimension on these jams here. I'm going to actually throw them on the windows. I'm going to edit the witness line to add another one at the windows. And just get this centered up in here. I don't know if this is going to work modularly with the brick, but we'll get it close enough. So it looks like 8.5 on both sides. Get it nice and centered, but let's go to our 3D view. Now, if you haven't adjusted your 3D view, you can select your entire building, window over it, go to your Modify tab, go to the View tab, and select the section box button below. You can deselect everything, hit Escape to deselect everything. I'm going to save just because sometimes when it starts running slow, I'm always worried that it's going to all of a sudden crash. So just stretch this out a bit more to make sure we can see everything. So if we look at this, that looks good. And we need to adjust these windows up above, but I think that looks good. Let's go check out the west elevation. Modularly. Looks like it needs some work. So let's select this window, and let's move it over a bit to make sure it's working within the modular brick. I noticed that this often will get kind of messed up. The little brick reveal. And so you might have to, as we move things around, you might have to go through and change it, align it again so that it's aligned with the correct, so, it's working correctly with the brick coursing. And I'd probably wait to do this until we get this window figured out, just to be sure. So I think that looks good. Let's go to our floor plan just to make sure. So we got 7'9". window, 7'4" window. So we should be able to select the curtain wall, the window there, and make that 7'9". Get it lined up, and actually it looks like we probably could push this out. Is there a reason why we couldn't do an 8-foot window here? Yeah, I don't see why not, unless it doesn't unless it doesn't work with our coursing. But I think it does. Also, don't forget about your soldier course up here to adjust that. Just going to align these windows. Oops, that didn't work. It moved the wall, not the window. So make sure you get the dash line when you are when you're aligning with the windows above. Make sure you're not getting the wall. Now you can do multiple, but just remember to uncheck the multiple so you don't end up aligning something you don't want to. And so right now I'm going to have to hit either escape and then get back into the align command, because it'll still be multiple. If I would have tried to align those other sides, it would have tried to align it with the other edge we were trying to align to. So with your align multiple on, just remember, I'm aligning, I'm only going to align this one thing, so I need to hit escape to get out of that aligning with that surface. Oh, see, I didn't do it. So I need to hit escape all the way out, align, and select this edge. Hit tab to get the actual curtain wall edge, and then align, hit escape, align again to get these curtain wall edges. Now we fixed the front side. Alrighty, so let's go and fix these other ends. Let's start on this north elevation. Just double click on the arrow in the front. And I'm just going to select the wall so I can see them behind it. And let's go back to level 1 floor plan. Hit the dimension DI, or come over to annotate and then hit align dimension. And we'll do the same process. Select the window jam. Make sure you get the dashed line so you can use the dimensions to readjust. Then you can select the dashed line of the window, curtain wall, to change the settings. So this looks like, often we'll just eyeball it and then change it later when I get some round dimensions so that I can do quick mental math. So I made it 6'6", 8-foot window, and 6'6" again. And I'm going to do the same thing on this other side. And I actually can keep this string of dimensions going if I wanted. Make sure to select the dashed line for the curtain wall. We can change this to 6'6" and get that centered up. Let's check out our 3D view on that side. And it looks good. We'll have to align the windows above. Let's go to our north elevation. Align, remembering that we have the multiple alignment selected. so that when we go to align, we need to make sure and escape, or just making sure that we are not doing that where it's going to try to align with the opposite side. So I believe you need to click into the command each time when multiple alignment is on. But it allows you not to pick the aligning edge every time. So hit align, select that edge, tab to make sure you have the dashed line of the curtain wall. And then I'll just hit align again, just kind of like when we were doing the trim multiple. Oops, I accidentally hit the wall, so it's moving the entire wall over instead of just the curtain wall. So I hit escape, and I'm going to align, or undo, I think. And just to make sure I'm aligning just the storefront curtain wall assembly. You can actually do the same thing on the other side. Just going to mirror these dimensions. Yep, no, I'm not, because it's trying to keep them associated there. But we already remembered that they're 6'6" off of this grid D. We can just run our string across. Select the dashed line for the curtain wall. Type in 6'6". We're good to go. Now we'll go to this south elevation and do the aligning again. Select the edge of the curtain wall. Hitting tab to make sure you get the actual curtain wall. Hit AL or go hit type align again. And so I'm going to hit AL, or actually I'm going to go to modify tab. I'm still in align command, but I want to get back into it so I can change the aligning edge. And again, I'll hit align or AL and align. Now the next thing I want to do, actually, which we should have done initially, was just make sure our brick coursing is still working. Ugh, it's not. So we may have to adjust these a bit, but that's okay. I'm just going to select all of them here. Or all of them in this column. And hit move MV, or come up here to modify and hit move. I'm going to try to move them to that CMU joint. I'm going to go check the 3D elevation to make sure. Yeah, I think we're still. Ugh. Let's see. Maybe we'll have to make these ones 7'4", so they fit in between the brace frames a bit better, and still fitting in the modular layout. Yeah, because I'm guessing if I go this direction with it, I'm going to run into the same problem on the other side. Oh, no, maybe not. So let's go back to our plan. We're on our south elevation, so that would be on this side. And so instead of 6'6" on both sides, we're actually going to make it a little off center. So it works on our modular 6'8", 8 foot, 6'4", 6'4". Let's go back to our south elevation. Make sure this is all copacetic. Align our soldier course while we're thinking about it. And now we can select these windows. So what I'm going to do is just tab in here to grab each of these windows. I'm going to try to just move them, and hopefully they'll get that alignment with the window below, and they do. It's that extension kind of snap. I'll move again. Alrighty. Let's go to the north side and fix those up. So now we can go to level 1 floor plan. And what do we say? What was the dimension? 6'4". And 6'4". And we'll do the same thing, making sure that these upper windows are aligned with that window that we just moved on level 1 below. MV to move. I'm just tabbing in to get the actual curtain wall. And I'm going to hit MV to move. Mary Victor. There it is. Take a look at our 3D view. It's looking pretty good. What's that? Oh yes, this the wall on the back. So we need to look at the east elevation and adjust those. So I'm going to go to the level 1 floor plan. I'm going to hit AL for align. I'm going to uncheck multiple align. I'm going to select this edge here of this kind of corresponding window and align it. And then I got to come back down here, select this other edge, hit align, and then the same process on the other side, aligning this edge with the wedge of the window over here, pan back down using the middle mouse click, and then align over here. Now let's go to our east elevation. You can see the changes. Brick modularly, we look like we're good. And so now we would just need to align with the windows up above. Got these 8-foot windows. Just going to take a quick dimension to make sure that these are, oh, see there's a 7'4", so let's use our align command and multiple to align like we did on the front side. Being careful to align the curtain wall, not the wall. So you do that by tabbing and get that dashed line by holding on your mouse over the edge. And so align again. We'll align this far side so it doesn't try to like make a super small window here. Hit align again to make sure that you're using a different edge to align. And then now. Alrighty. That's how we fix our elevations and structure to get our windows to get better, our windows and our brace frames to kind of better align on our building. So yeah. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll catch you in the next video. It's starting to look like a building now, isn't it?